no matter what we do, we cannot act in the reception of the crying children.
But what if we didn't have to? Welcome back rather, to my quest to beat the Library of Ruina with only one librarian. Last time I introduced the flaws that we had available to us, their general setups, and how we were going to use them at that point in the game. To save time here, I'll just go over the flaws that we use when they become relevant. There's no real point to front load this video with the fact that most of the flaws are almost entirely useless for now. Still, this explanation inevitably ended with Hod absolutely storming ahead of the other options, firmly planting her in the position of most importance at the time. Malkuth got closer as we continued to progress, especially after a realization gave us some of the best eco pages in the game, but for general use, Hod was still the best option we had available. And then we hit a wall. Or rather, we hit the dozen of small waxen children that were causing us to be incapable of acting each turn, utterly freezing the challenge in place. With our dice locked, we couldn't attack, and without attacking, we couldn't stop ourselves from being hopeless to defend against their attacks. Or so I thought. Eugen's page has on it one majorly important aspect for this challenge. It was useful before now, but it becomes nigh life-saving here. That aspect is this. Once per turn on a one-sided attack, respond with a block die. Block die can deal stagger damage, and by staggering the child who's keeping us locked, we would actually be able to carry on. Except for one problem. The statistical likelihood of us actually pulling that off is minuscule. It's really improbable even with Maxmin active, which is pushing the boundaries of what I want to try and achieve. So, yeah. Me and chat agreed to bend the rules slightly to make the fight more bearable without using Maxmin. I would bring 2 other librarians to the first phase of the fight, following the same rules as we do for abnormality fights, which is base key pages, no attribution, no control from my end, to ensure that this would only be a way into the fight, and not a way of trivializing it altogether. So surely that's the fight resolved, right? We get past the problem child, no pun intended, and can easily beat the second wave of the fight, so that should be all that's in our way. No fight would have more than 2 phases, maybe 3 at most, but, you know, why would this fight have 3? We've already fought the loose children, the big children. Sadly, random straw man who somehow doesn't know the crying children fight in the slightest and yet decided to start watching a part 2 of a Library of Ruina challenge, that is very wrong. The reception of the crying children doesn't consist of just 2 stages, or even just 3, it consists of 7 stages, with 3 of the 7 being problematic for us. Our meat shield librarians are, frankly, not going to survive that long. We need some other solution for phase 3 and 5 then. A different way to deal damage that doesn't rely on being able to slot pages. There's only one person for it. Malkuth. Malkuth's flaw revolves around the risk-reward of being hit in exchange for buffs when hitting others. This is actually really good for us, as you could no doubt guess by the amount of times we end up being hit when we have to deal with every single attack from every enemy on the field at once. But as well as giving strength when hit with loyalty, Malkuth can also deal damage when she's hit. There are 3 major ways to do this, the first of which gives the enemies burn on hitting her, the second giving bleed and burn, and the last directly dealing damage and healing her sometimes when the enemies hit her. By collecting all of these 3 and using a little bit of good luck, aka about 5 hours of attempts, yeah, no, this took a while, this really did take a while, we finally attained our freedom. Before we carry on, I'd like to ask you to consider subscribing or liking the video. It really helps out the channel and lets me make really long edited videos like this one without YouTube assuming my channel is dead and turning off the lights on me. But with that said, I'll let you get back to the video now. So, what do we have left to solve with this newfound freedom? That would be the 2 remaining stages in this level, W Corp and the Index, as well as the other 3 lower level realizations of Yesod, Hod, and Netzach. One of these is incredible for us, and it's probably not who you expect if you're unfamiliar with true soloing, but I'll get back to him later. Now, I did explain the Index and W Corp briefly in the last video, but I glanced over them as they weren't really anything more than a stopping off point in our mission to get an index page for Malkuth's realization. Now though, they're deserving of more attention, mainly because we need to actually kill them now. The index is a one-stage fight, consisting of 4 one-die enemies that roll insanely high and basically can't run out of pages thanks to Will of the Prescript, a 3-page drawing card for single index. Their stupidly high damage output is almost entirely lethal for us, finishing us off before we could even get close to the ego pages that would let us quickly clear the reception. W Corp is quite similar, having the page overcharge available to them for only 3 light, with a max of 13, 12, and 11 on each of its attacking dice. Ordinarily, this carries with it the heavy penalty of immobilizing its user for the turn after they use it, but that's entirely meaningless to us if we get staggered in the process. It's also a 2-stage encounter, the potential RNG dependency of which is mitigated by a min-max clause, but still, something we have to be wary of there. So, with these 2 titans ahead of us, which do you think I picked? The always high-clashing 2-turn clearing index, or the also potentially high-clashing 2-phase W Corp? That's right, I picked Yes Odds Realization. As part of achieving the true ending of this game, we need to complete every realization available to us at one point or another. This means that we may as well complete the abnormality phases whenever we like, especially when the alternatives are brick walls like the ones we're facing. As well as this, each realization gives us more XP towards leveling up the library, allowing us to skip potentially problematic stages at the end of Star of the City. And trust me, using my foresight as where I am now, there are a lot of problematic stages. Still, we're going to need to do them all before we finish the challenge. But, we can at least stall out the requirements until the end of Impuritas. So, what does Yes Odds Realization contain? Well, like all realizations that I know of currently, Yes Odds consists of 5 distinct phases: Forsaken Murderer, All-Round Helper, Singing Machine, Funeral of Dead Butterflies, and finally, Durfray Shoots. Forsaken Murderer requires debuff application on Angela to keep her in check. All-Round Helper simply needs you to avoid taking damage. Defensive dice overflow, my beloved. Singing Machine is the same as All-Round Helper, except you can't let them hit you at all on one particular page. Funeral of Dead Butterflies deals a metric ton of stagger damage to you that you need to deal with, and finally Durfray Shoots is practically just a mass attack comprehension check. For the most part, this realization is easy, and with HOD's Abno pages we'd be done in no time at all. The first 3 phases aren't even an issue, with the only actual blocker coming in on the 4th stage. The issue is, we're stuck with Yes Odds Abno pages. And I hear you say, "Oh, but Mr. Streamer, please, shut up about my Ongust." There's a section of this video dedicated to my Ongust, but for a start, we aren't even in Star of the City. How on earth do you expect me to have access to either of the 2 passes we need to run to make that work? I'll get back to it later, just accept that Yes Odds Abno pages are awful for now. As well as that, the first phase of the fight, whilst not difficult, is in effect a massive dice roll. That means our time is going to be taken up on simply resetting the stage to get the luck we need to carry on. So what I'm trying to say is, Yes Odds Realization is going to take time to beat, not effort. The strategy we eventually settled on was this: win the first phase. You either do or you don't, so there isn't really much strategy I can say here, provided you keep debuff application up. In the second phase, focus on whoever is dealing damage in Angela's phase, and make sure to not let her gain strength. Once you defeat her mass attack, she'll be staggered, letting you quickly take her out with your offensive cards. As a quick reminder for the entirety of Ruina, when you stagger or kill an enemy, you get light back. So really, you can treat the ads as an extra juice box of sorts if you're beginning to run out of light now. Although, if you are beginning to run out of light now, God help you for the rest of the phases. Still, for the third, avoid being staggered whilst you prepare to clash with the ad's attacks on the Singing Machine activation turn. You only need to win against the page that staggers them. It'll cancel the second die provided you've gone first. Angela can mostly be ignored until you need to take her out here. She doesn't really have anything problematic you need to deal with, so you can just kill the other 3 and then deal with her. The 4th stage was the major difficulty for us, and eventually we discovered the key. The key was, to put it simply, don't get greedy. Clash with Angela when she has a dangerous attack, and to block her speed dice when those appear, but the real target you need to deal with first are her ads. They all deal stagger damage. The main thing we're actually attempting to avoid here, as being staggered will result in an instant death from Angela. Once they're cleared out though, you can handle Angela without much difficulty. With that, the final stage is a matter of reading comprehension, which I know, that's tough, but allow me to explain the two types of mass attack for you, mass summation and mass individual. Summation rolls every dice on a page, adding up their values and using them against the mass attack, whilst individual, as you may expect, performs the mass attack against each individual die of the page, with each die on the mass attack equating to each die on the page. Reusers don't activate against mass attacks, and all of the dice on a page that lose to a mass attack are removed from that page when it comes to clash. Losing against a mass summation clears the entire page, whilst losing against a mass individual only loses each die that fails, as said before. With this in mind, the 5th stage fell on the first try, albeit with me momentarily nearly throwing the entire run. So how useful are the rewards from doing this? Well, they're not. For true solo gameplay, there is one useful ego page, and it isn't even that useful out of the one stage and build that it's good for. Yesod will have his limelight eventually, but that day is not today. One thing we can do now, though, is Hod's realization. In theory. What would be more accurate for me to say is that we can access Hod's realization, but we're nowhere near able to beat it. This is because of the very first stage in the realization, Dream of a Black Swan. Dream of a Black Swan is by far the hardest realization stage we've had to fight so far, and the worst part is that the realization isn't even easy after it. So yeah, whilst in theory we could beat the realization, I don't think it would be more efficient than waiting until we become a star of the city to do so. Still, mopping up the rest of the abnormality fights available to us actually unlocks something critical to the future of the challenge: Netzach and Gebra's flaws. Both for the same reason at the moment, but a whole new strategy will unlock when we properly get Gebra back to power. But for now, her strength lies in the same mechanic that gives Netzach his: stealth. Stealth is a mechanic you might not know about in Ruina, being sourced from, to my current knowledge, only 2 abnormality pages in the entire game. These pages being Claws of Savagery and Spring Genesis respectively. What it actually does is simple. Whilst active, the librarian who has it becomes untargetable and unclashable for the duration of the turn. If you can keep it active indefinitely, they will become immortal. For Gebra, this consists of taking about 25% of her health per turn, a feat which can be achieved with self-bleeding and healing pages, although this is very finicky and something I actually haven't figured out yet even whilst writing the script. So Netzach's is comparatively far stronger, albeit taking far longer to get online because of it. Each turn, one enemy on the field will be afflicted with Petal. If the Librarian with Spring's Genesis hits the enemy 4 times, they will activate Stealth for the next turn, having only the minor problem of decreasing Netzach's stagger every time the effect is activated, something which can be offset fairly easily by running Mindhauler. This sounds really strong, and in a proper game of Ruina really can be with other Librarians there to carry you until you can get them activated. But here they're heavily nerfed due to one simple fact. We can't really survive an entire field's worth of unopposed attacks for the 5 or 6 turns it takes to get Spring Genesis running. Despite this, I tried everything to get it or Claws of Savagery to work, sinking attempt after attempt into these fights. We genuinely spent hours here, toiling away at these 2 stages, until eventually I gave in and asked chat for suggestions on what to try against this utter roadblock. The answer was simple: Hod. All this time, I had been blinded by the sheer number of attacks that were being thrown our way. I had lost faith in Hod's power. This was, quite clearly, a mistake. Within a single stream of switching over to Hod, we managed to beat not only the Index, but W Corp as well. With that, we can finally gain access to the penultimate act of this challenge: Star of the City. Up until now, I mostly had clear knowledge of what I was doing with the challenge from my first playthrough of the game, allowing me to plan for the obstacles in our way. But here, that advantage is gone. I never really made it past the first row of Star of the City, progressing through Liu and part of the Thumb before the laptop I was using at the time decided to implode, causing me to forget about beating Ruina entirely. So from here on out, we're going in blind. There are a few things I knew I needed to aim for here, mostly because of the chat sometimes attempting to backseat and letting information slip, augmented by my own, also considerably incomplete, knowledge of what I was facing up ahead. Firstly, I wanted to get access to Don Quan's page, accessed by doing the first general reception of the chapter. His main strength is how well he ramps through increased emotion levels, something that we'll never be short of thanks to being the only librarian on field at a time. For a start, he's the first character we'll get access to that has speed 3 on their page, but they also gain 1 power to all offensive dice at emotion level 3 and onwards, as well as 1 of both protection at level 1, 2 of both at level 3 emotion, and 3 of both at the maximum emotion level of 5. Comboed with Lone Fixer and the Health Haulers, this will let us survive far more than we have any right to. There's just one issue. We need a Star of the City book before we can summon him. The first receptions on offer to us at the moment are the Thumb's first reception, the Church of Gears, Liu's first reception, and last but not least, Cane Office. 2 of the above are far more hellish than the others, that being the Thumb and Liu. For reasons that may not be apparent right now, we can barely even survive the first turn in these fights, let alone actually progress through to end their second phases. That leaves the Church of Gears and Cane Office left for us to fight. And at first, Cane Office might seem to be the better of the 2 choices. 3 enemies should allow us to take out 1 of them, but funnily enough, they actually have more speed dice between them than the Church of Gears have in their first phase combined. As well as that, they've got a few pages that are downright lethal. From Energy Beam rolling 15 to 23, to Uncanny Strike being able to spend 2 charge to be able to do 18 damage to us on hit, with a 7 to 13 natural rolling die to boot, augmented to 8 to 14 due to a Pierce Die power passive. This stage looks like it should be easy, and compared to some of the things we'll have to do later, it really is, but that's not something we can really deal with right now. So let's look at the other possible stage. What does the Church of Gears actually do? Well, like the smiling faces before them, the Church of Gears focuses on using smoke to increase the damage they deal to their target, which would be problematic if it wasn't for the fact that we can just run Puffy Broom to turn this supposed increase in damage against us to an increase of damage against them. As well as this, they only have 5 speed die between them, that all only use grunt attacks, a noticeable difference from Cane Office's 6 speed die and higher tier pages. It takes a bit of doing, but after realizing that this is the correct reception to push, we get a book not long after starting. And so it's finally time for the hardest fight in the game, Dong, and he's dead. Donghuan is unique in the fact that you already have to fight him solo in the base game. Unfortunately for Donghuan, we've gotten a fair bit of practice in on how to solo entire fields of enemies and bosses. He, meanwhile, is just a guy who has rapidly discovered how to shapeshift into a book. With his strength though, we can quickly return back to the Church of Gears and wipe them off the map, taking out Argalia after them. Honestly, after surviving the first few turns, they didn't stand a chance. You might expect from here that the next encounter we'd try to resolve would be Cane Office, or maybe another of the general receptions. But you'd be wrong. For a start, holy, those general receptions are rough with only 1 librarian. Surviving even a few turns to any of them other than Donghuan is nigh impossible. And as for Cane Office, there's actually an easier stage that's been unlocked for us to deal with. The Red Mist. Let's play a game. How long do you think the Red Mist took us to beat? Is it 1 hour, an hour and a half, or 3 hours plus? If you guessed any of these, congrats, you're wildly incorrect. The Red Mist died in about 40 minutes, making her the easiest main stage in Star of the City, and quite close to being the easiest in the entire challenge. Here's the build in case you're struggling to take her out on your own run. Through this build, you really shouldn't see any difficulties whatsoever. The Red Mist key page is really good, but it's going to take some theory crafting before I realise quite how strong it is. The main thing that caught my eye at the time were her standard attacks that decrease in cost the more you use them, which ordinarily are the bread and butter of a Red Mist build, but this isn't actually her at her strongest. We'll get back to that in a while. With that Chekhov's gun fully loaded, the next stage that unlocks for us is the Purple Tear, who, similarly to the Red Mist, is actually really easy to take out, despite what a lot of people in chat wanted to say. Sitting at a little over an hour and a half to take care of, she's actually the second easiest main stage to clear out. Now you might be thinking, oh but Coops, doesn't she teleport to a different floor at half HP? To which I say, yes, she does. But I didn't send these people onto the field, just like I didn't send the other librarians into abnormality fights. So, provided I don't interact with them in any way, the true solo status is maintained. So yeah, that's the Purple Tear taken out. What does that actually give us though? Well, the purple tier's key page is really good for a few different reasons, and it's going to be really useful to deal with abnormality stages. But honestly, I get a little bit too enamored with it in this challenge. I'll explain what makes it so good first, because it really is useful as a page, but then I'll go over why we don't actually use it all too much in Star of the City. As a hint, it's because another page is far better for us, with the situations we find ourselves in considered. The purple tier's key page is unique in the fact that it actually has 4 different modes: Slash, Pierce, Blunt, and Guard, with each mode having its own deck that it's able to use, all of which can be set by you and aren't preset like some of the decks. Bina's deck. These modes all increase the clashing values of their respective dice, but they also have hidden benefits that are added by a status. These are 50% additional damage and slashing stance, 50% additional stagger damage and blunt stance, double status application and piercing stance, and finally, nullification of all negative statuses in defensive stance. As a funny aside, this page actually makes the Crying Children easy, as Immobilized is a negative effect. It's far too late for that now, but I just thought I'd bring it up as a little novelty if we wanted to go back and kill them now. With this key page, we can now manage more of the attacks coming towards us, especially all status application. This will be very useful for a certain notable stage, but it isn't actually as useful as you'd expect for everything else. That's for one important reason: sheer volume of attacks. 2 of the major roadblocks we face right now, the Thumb and Liu, inflict status to us. The Thumb gives us bleed and Liu gives us burn, which can rapidly stack up, leading to our quick demise. But that's not actually the most considerable source of damage we take. That is down to the sheer volume of attacks that we need to deal with to actually beat a phase. All grunt encounters, bar one notable exception, have speed 1 minimum on every opponent. Combined with the fact that we now always have to fight against 5 enemies in these grunt stages, we need to deal with 10 attacks every turn until we can clear the field slightly and give us some breathing room. We can't afford to spend turns on fights like this, which is why the purple tier isn't actually that good for the majority of the story encounters we have left in Star of the City. We will use her key page for all our abnormality encounters from now on, but I'm mostly just ignoring those for the time being until we can get good enough pages to blitz through them. So what now? Well, first things first, we've got a few more items on our shopping list to pick up from the general receptions, namely the Ujat's key page and Ye's key page. I've probably pronounced both of those horrifically, but, you know, if you are like the one Egyptian viewer who's currently watching the channel, please don't complain too hard in the comments. Both of these passives that I want to pick up improve our survivability, and I genuinely believe that without one of the two, this challenge would be entirely impossible. So how are we going to go about getting their pages, if not with the purple tier? Well, simple, the Red Mist. This is the key page that relegates the purple tier to abnormalities only, and the solution to all my problems against grunt stages. Past me hasn't realised it just yet, but this is the starting gun that will echo out into the rest of the challenge. For now though, my Red Mist build is rudimentary at best, still using the page and light economy cards that I mentioned earlier. With a quick test on Kane Office proving incredibly effective, we managed to take out an Ujat and Ye themselves before long. The other general receptions are far too strong for us at the moment, and to spoil things slightly, I don't actually go back and fight them later. Well, other than when we accidentally summon Mireille Life Insurance, which I doubt editing me will be even able to find the clip of to put here because that's like a tiny drop in the 50 plus hours of challenge footage I would have to comb through, but you know, yeah, just a point of correction that I'm sure somebody would have commented about otherwise. Anyway, what did we take this sidetrack for? Other than procrastinating having to deal with our problems, these 2 key pages unlock a ton of useful sustain abilities for us. The less useful of the 2, the Ujat, has a passive that can give us 1 to both types of protection for 2 points, 2 damage protection for 4 points, and finally the ability to restore half of the stagger damage taken in a scene for 4 points. It might not sound like much, but being able to reduce the damage we take across the board by 1 really does add up when you consider we're already taking 10 pages worth of damage a turn, which, assuming middle of the road dice values for each page, adds up to 20 dice worth of attacks per turn. When you start to phrase it like that, 2 points to take 20 less normal and stagger damage begins to sound far more worth it in my eyes. Before we go over Ye, I'd like to talk about the mechanic that limits us the most as we begin to push the boundaries of this challenge. that mechanic being passive attribution. One of the major game mechanics of the Library of Ruina is the fact that you can move other passives from key pages to the one your librarian is using, helping you fight off the ever stronger enemies that you'll need to face as you progress. There are 3 limiting factors to the system. You may only have 9 passives at a time on a key page, including the passives already there at base. You may only add passives from up to 4 additional key pages, and finally, the cost of the passives you add may not exceed the point limit for the level you are at. Currently, we're able to have up to 10 points worth of passives added to our key pages, a number that won't actually change until we reach the closing acts of the game after Star of the City. Back towards the start of the game, when our passive attribution cap was even lower, it somehow was less of a difficulty. On one hand, because the threats we're facing were far easier to deal with, but also because we didn't actually have enough passives to need to seriously consider what would work best for a given situation. That is definitely not the case now, and a lot of the difficulty arises in the fact that we need to somehow fit 5 librarians worth of build into only 1 librarian's worth of build space. Only being able to draw from 4 cards at a time, and then only being able to spend 10 points after that, is incredibly limiting, and is a constant game of compromise going on behind the scenes of the challenge. For the sake of this video, I've not spent any time at all focusing on the actual tinkering process we go through with our builds because, simply, a lot of the time it can look like 10 minutes of doing absolutely nothing, as me and chat go back and forth on whether or not it's more worth it to run a healing passive or a clashing passive. Lone Fixer, a passive I made quite a big deal about in the last video, for example, costs 3 points, putting it towards the middle of the range in terms of cost most passives demand now. The page we draw from to access it, Yuna's page, doesn't have any other passives we would want to run on it. However, it gives us 3 strength for free after turn 1, so honestly earns its rather hefty cost of 30% of our available points and 25 of our key page space. Although mostly hidden if you haven't watched the streams, this is the real meat and potatoes of what makes this run so interesting in my mind. I've not mentioned them by name before, but throughout this challenge there have been 2 other runners, and a third who will join us later, that have been working on the challenge too for their own entertainment, namely Goonie, Mr. Boomy, and Sans Gaming. They are far better at this game than I am, which, I mean, yeah, no kidding, I've not even beaten Ruina before, but I still need to bring them up to make what I feel is a really cool point. At no moment in this challenge, other than when I've turned to them for advice on how to make my spaghetti resemble something more like the gourmet cooking they're doing, have our tactics aligned. And, for me, this is what makes this challenge so incredible. Removing the ability to run plain old meta strategies and instead forcing innovation leads to wildly different places for each of us, which in turn makes our strategies all the more successful when somebody does something that the rest of us didn't even consider as a possibility. Apparently my addition to the team is the unique ability to spontaneously cause a migraine in any good Ruina player who looks at my builds, but that's still a valid contribution, right? Anyway, back to Ye. He has one particular passive that we care about, with a few more passives that we can use to save cards elsewhere. This passive is Immediate Repairs, and it's something I won't do without for the remaining 99% of this challenge. Its effect is simple. Once per act, upon being staggered, don't be, and instead restore to full stagger. For 2 points, this is an absolute steal, making the rest of this challenge possible in my opinion. You simply can't restore stagger fast enough, outside of one considerable mention we'll talk about later, to keep up with all the attacks otherwise. With these 2 key pages in hand, I attempted to use the purple tier to clear a path through Star of the City. This went, atrociously really. We could survive a few turns, but with the sheer amount of attacks we had to deal with, we could barely survive long enough to level up our motion a few times, let alone actually pull off a coherent strategy. We needed something new. Something innovative. Something fast. Something like Smoke Gebbera. After spending what probably equates to about 10 hours bashing my head against the metaphorical brick wall in an attempt to have it cave before my skull did, I conceded that we potentially needed a change in strategy. I had been using other key pages intermittently at this point, beginning to lose faith in the purple tier as an offensive method. And it was during one such moment that an idea struck. There was a particular page I hadn't paid much attention to in the Red Mist's arsenal at this point, namely Onrush. It didn't fit with my preferred style of being able to win the battle of attrition, costing 3 light and lacking page draw or light restore like the Red Mist's other pages have. But I was out of pages regardless, and I was going to die that turn, so I decided to just throw an onrush at an enemy and see what happened. They were staggered. The page reused, staggering the next enemy. Everything was working as I thought it would. But then the page reused again, finally hitting someone it couldn't stagger. But it was at this moment that the run changed forever. Before now, I thought that Onrush only worked on the first time it staggered or killed an enemy, serving as an extra additional tank that could deal a little bit more damage before petering out. But no, Onrush reuses on every stagger or kill. This was our way out, our golden ticket to victory against the Grunt Receptions. There was only one issue. How on earth were we supposed to be able to consistently stagger every enemy on the field? And here's where the smoke comes in. By running the passive Puffy Broom, smoke built up on Gebra would instead increase her damage by 10%, as well as increasing her clashing values by 1 when at 9 or more smoke. This could also be combined with a passive from Wang, one of the smiling faces we demolished in part 1 of this challenge, namely Sooty Thwack. This passive boosts the stagger damage of attacks by 10% per smoke, doubling our stagger damage at 10. These passives combined, in addition to a few other passives we can pick up, allow us to almost always stagger our opponents, only really failing if they use both a defensive card and we roll the absolute minimum that we can, which, you know, that still happens multiple times in the challenge, but this is more consistent than the alternative. Words don't really do this discovery justice because within hours of this, our corp was all but dead, only needing the classic not bad RNG on the final phase to finish its second encounter, Thumb 1 and 2 were dead, and Liu 1 and 2 were dead. This left 4 gates on our freedom from Star of the City. Liu 3, Index 2, and the final bosses of these 2 branches. The Index was the first to fall, with Netsack Immortality paving the way to an easy clear after one minor fumble. This was by far the easiest, but it gave way to something worse. Much worse. The Lius, broadly speaking, were the same but harder. Or at least they were until Liu 3 decided to take most of the same mechanics with an added spanner thrown directly into the inner workings of my machine. The spanner? Damage. Or, to be more accurate, the number of attacks levied directly at our head was too much for Gebra to deal with most of the time. We needed a way to be able to take breaks and survive without attacks being piled on us for free. We needed Claws of Savagery. This is the first point of the challenge that I'm going to talk about a technique that will be used for the rest of the run, emotion coin manipulation. Emotion coins are stupid and don't work 99% of the time, but for the purpose of this video and the strategies we use, a simple description of you get negative emotion when you clash bad and positive emotion when you clash good will suffice. Max rolling and min rolling also generate emotion coins like you'd expect them to. It's a headache of a system that's really poorly coded, but in other news, grass is green, the sky is blue, and Project Moon still hasn't made a good tutorial, so let's just get to the point. Emotion coins determine the overall emotion of a floor. More positive emotion means more positive abnormality pages. More negative means more negative abnormality pages. The card we want is firmly negative, and as such means we're going to need to lose at least 2 clashes, or get a min roll, yada yada, you get the point. Turn 1 to pick it up. I just want to say, without any way to reset stages, this is infuriating and is genuinely a pain to have to do, but without it, I don't think there's any way we could have gotten as far as we did here. Now, with Claws of Savagery obtained turn 1, we can deal with the reception quickly and... Hold on. What's that, Skippy? Another poorly thought out Project Moon mechanic has decided to cause problems for us that we now have to deal with? That's right! If you couldn't tell by my very sarcastic tone, the speed at which we clear reception to avoid a painful death has one major downside to it. Namely, that the emotion level of the people we're fighting never has a chance to rise past 1 or 2. Surely this isn't an issue though, right? Why would Project Moon tie a system to their already arbitrary grinding mechanics that I really want to ignore, so run no grind, to make it even more painful for you to engage with as a vanilla player? An answer to that is, I don't fucking know, but I do know it's not fun in the slightest. If an enemy doesn't have their emotion level raised, a very common occurrence given our inability to clash with more than 2 or 3 attacks per turn, we only ever have a percentage chance to get their book on death. And by percentage chance, I mean about 30 to 50%. Liu 3 decided to be cute and show off just how annoying this is by not dropping a certain book for us, so we had to do it again. And guess what? It didn't drop again, needing a 3rd attempt to finally get the book we needed. By this point in the challenge, I was beginning to go insane if you can't tell by how I sound. The 80 to 90 hours I spent on this challenge in total starting to catch up with me. And the funniest part is, this isn't even the most unlikely thing that'll happen in this video, but we're going to talk about him later because I've really tried not to talk about him up until now because he is a major pain. For now, we have one more person to talk about in the Liu track, or technically 2. That one stage is Xiao. As the final boss of the Liu track, Xiao has a lot of damage. As her song says, that I can't legally play if I still want to make money off of this video, she is fire. But instead of burning those she cares for, she's about to burn us. A lot. Xiao's reception follows the same trend as the rest of the Liu receptions, yet more damage and burn application, but this time with the brand new twist of being able to inflict 40 burn onto a librarian in a single turn of her second phase. This is, as you might expect, nowhere near manageable. Her increased damage from both her and Mirrors having access to 3 speed dice in phase 1 before we've even ramped in the slightest is already borderline game ending, and adding fire onto this makes the situation practically unwinnable, with any key page we could care to throw at it doing their best impression of a firelighter shortly after entering the field. Any key page bar 1, that is. The Purple Tears. As I said an age ago now, the Purple Tears key page has one notable fight in this challenge. That notable fight is here and now, against Xiao, where the guard stance nullifies all burn damage that would be given to us otherwise. So, now we can ignore the immense amounts of burn, what are we actually going to be dealing with? Well, let me quickly explain what Xiao's reception actually consists of. It has 2 phases, one with both Mirrors and Xiao, and another with only Xiao herself. As is tradition for the solo challenge, the hardest part of this fight is phase 1, and our attempt to reach the cards we would need to make phase 2 possible. If it was just Xiao alone in both phases, this fight would probably be just another purple tear or red mist. The reduced speed dice values of solo bosses meaning we ramp at effectively the same speed they do. But alas, we are not so lucky. Instead, we need to deal with 6 attacks from turn 1, increasing to 7 or 8 if their emotion levels raise enough. Usually by that point they're about to die anyway though, so it's not really something we have to worry about. And a lot more damage, with mass attacks beginning to be thrown at us later into the first phase. Phase 2 does have a dedicated gimmick to it, but there's 0 chance we can survive if we engage with it for a prolonged period of time, so I'll get back to that when it becomes relevant. Before we actually get started with attempts though, there's one thing I need to bring up. Myongust. Ever since we first started this challenge, I've had people in chat constantly mentioning Myongust whenever the conversation turns to the builds we can pull off later in the challenge. This frequency only increased as we moved further and further into the game, until we actually reached the point where we could run Myongust. And through a quick bit of testing, I realised something. Myongust sucks. For true soloing at least. Ignoring the one fight it actually holds some merit at, it is abysmal. And if you'd let me explain, I'll show you precisely why Myongust sucks 9 times out of 10 for this challenge. Myongust is a build in Ruina that consists of 2 passives. The Strongest from the Red Mist key page, and Mayo's Prowess from Mayo's page. The reason why this works together is rather simple. Mayo's Prowess gives you more clashing power and damage the higher your speed is above the enemy, and the Strongest makes your lowest rolling speed die actually roll infinite instead, the effect repeating across all tied lowest speed dice if a tie does occur. This is then joined with an abnormality page on Yesod's floor, Chained Wrath, to lower all of Yesod's speed dice to a permanent 1 speed each turn, also giving him 1 to 3 more blunt power as a side effect. This permanent 1 speed dice tie means that all of his speed dice roll infinite, applying Mayo's Prowess to all of them. Now, in theory, that's really strong. And if you could only have the upsides, then yeah, it would be really strong. But here's where the downsides start to come in. Firstly, and most majorly in my opinion, is the cost. If you remember my side tangent from a little bit ago, we only have 10 points to play with when it comes to passive attribution. Myongust cost 8, 5 from Mayo's Prowess and 3 from the Strongest. This means that immediately we sacrifice 8 points and 2 card slots for a conditional plus 5 power. But why am I calling it conditional, you may ask? Doesn't it always apply to the infinite speed die? Yes, but actually no, not really, and to be honest, that's not even the reason why I'm calling it conditional. For a start, due to weird interaction mechanics, Myongust doesn't apply to counter dice at all. This is why you'd be wrong to say it always applies to the infinite speed die, by the way, but it isn't even the worst part of it, and isn't the reason why I'm calling it conditional. That would be because of the simple fact that Chained Wrath is a level 2 abnormality page. Level 2 abnormality pages can only appear from the 3rd emotion level onward. which, assuming we always level up our emotion, means lasting to turn 4 before we even begin to reap the rewards of that point investment. On all our speed dice at least. Just running Hod instead would get us to +5 to all offensive dice, including counters by the way, by turn 2, for a fraction of the investment, literally just 3 points from Lone Fixer, a card which, by the way, we can't even afford to run with Myongest active. So, Myongest is really bad, right? We're both agreed on that now, I hope. There's only one use case for Myongest, and that's where we have to only deal with a relatively small number of attacks, with low enough damage values for us to be able to survive to turn 4, and be able to get it up and running, with some actual tangible benefit after, to be able to gain 5 power up on all dice rolls at the expense of survivability. And it just so happens, Xiao is that situation. However, by this point in the challenge, I had to deal with at least 100 people telling me how Myongest was going to make the challenge easy once we got it. It didn't, by the way. How Myongest was going to utterly sweep away fields of enemies, which it didn't, by the way. And how the rest of the challenge would be a breeze after it. That is also very wrong. And frankly, by this point, I was sick and tired of it. And out of spite, I swore off Yesod and Myongest as a strategy entirely. I can't do the next part of the challenge justice through a recap, so I'll be using highlights from the stream to tell the story of what happened next. If you don't enjoy that sort of content, the timestamps built into the video will let you skip over it, but it will be slightly jarring if you skip from now to then, so do keep that in mind. I have put it in the video for a reason, and I do believe it makes the video better, but, you know, just in case it goes on a little bit too long for you, the choice is always there. Anyway, I'll let the tapes roll. We're back. We also lack music because of the stage we're doing. I just realized my microphone is a little bit close. There we are. Last stream got hit with about 1 million copyright claims, so we're going to be sticking to music I know is alright. So, what's the current strat? The current strat is what we're trying to move for is Netzach Immortality. So, as part of that, we're in defensive stance on purple tier because it stops burn entirely, and we're just trying to not die. Once we reach, I think it's 4 emotion level, we get Spring Genesis, and once we get Spring Genesis, we have 1, pretty much. So that's the strat, try and reach that. Just hope we don't die here. Oh, we got staggered, which means we're probably dead. Well, we'll be dead next turn, so yeah, that's death. Oh, there we are, I don't know which one's playing. This song just lives rent-free in my head. Evict it. So true. If there's anyone in chat that knows what this is from, then it will also live rent-free in your head. But, I assume most people here don't know. Stupid song. Such a stupid song. What did you miss? Nothing much. I would honestly, I'd be amazed to learn if anybody here knew what this was. Or was from. And we lose that clash, of course we do. And we lose that clash, of course we do. Well, that means at least we get pebbles. You can stop max rolling, by the way. You can stop max. You can stop. Thank you. Our max passive is 10. Okay, Serpentine. Anything really strong here? Nothing really strong, so let's go for another Serpentine. Brilliant. Brilliant. Ah. So 0 damage. Great max damage. That actually would have healed us, I think. Stagger-wise. Okay. Right. Now, we want this. Our Galaxy, even though I'm not going to use our Galaxy, it's nice to have. 7, sturdy defense against you, I suppose, and then chuck a Scattering Slash at you. Actually, yeah, chuck a Scattering Slash at you. Oh, we won that. Nice. We didn't win that, however. Ah, that's fine. Right, we won that. Ah, fuck, we're staggered, really? Because we get... Unrelenting procs here. You can stop max rolling. We've already Unrelenting's already triggered, mate. You beat her with Gebra. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, let's go for... no, we can't do our Galaxy, really. Well, we can. No, we can't. We're one emotion too short. Otherwise, we could use our Galaxy and then that, but we could do Faint Aroma. Because then we can do... this. And then that'll just... yeah. Okay. Luck and power stacking, fair enough. And then we reset. There we are. The fact that Mirror already is an emotion level 4 is awful for me. How am I staggered? Uh-huh. Ruina? Ruina, buddy? Ruina, I don't think I'm staggered. Right, well, let's hope that's not true. Because if that's true, we're fucked. Why was my stagger 0? Huh? Reset HP into what it was when you got the card, but you don't stagger. Oh, yes, okay, my stagger, I was staggered when I got the card, okay. Wow, that was just a bad play then. It might be worth it to get ever-repeating performance here. Just because that'll restore our health to 60, which I think is actually quite good. I don't know why I haven't thought of using it as like an actual restore before. That's never been on my mind as like a strategy I could use, but it makes sense to do. My question is it worth ever repeating performancing here? Because that's basically a heal, isn't it? Ta-da! And we also get the heal from a token of friendship, so even more. Okay. Sturdy defense you. Then we just Scattering Slash, frankly. Just every possible Scattering Slash. Because now if we do get hit, we basically should take no damage, effectively. Other than stagger damage, but we've got stagger healing things. Okay. Okay. Springs Genesis. One hit. Then the rest of these will hit because there's no way they don't hit. Because I put them against one dice. 3. Now I just have to go first. And now we die. Okay, but that's fine. That's fine. I understand. now that I understand the strategy behind ever repeating performance, I get it. I get it now. I get it now. I get the strategy. I can see. I see the vision. Springs Genesis. Okay, now. On you. Our Galaxy on you. And then I throw... Sturdy defense at you. And this has to work. It didn't hit. It splashes, we don't get Spring Genesis. We can still survive, we just have to survive here. Because of the first one splashing, we don't get the Springs Genesis proc here. Which is fine. I suppose. It's fine, we even heal from that. We heal from that. We heal from that. We heal from that. Okay. I can't play ever repeating performance because we no longer get emotion levels up. And because we're staggered, they no longer trigger the things, they're not going to stagger themselves. We're allowing stealth. What the fuck else would we be doing? Why would we not be allowing stealth, frankly? If we hadn't have splashed that first one, if we hadn't have splashed that, stealth would have triggered and we would have been fine. I could have switched modes and everything would have been perfectly fine. But yeah, no, the only reason I'm disallowing is my Myongest is because I fucking hate my Myongest. That's the only reason why I'm disallowing my Myongest. Ah, we won both of those. I hate my Myongest and I hate the fact that people say it's good for true soloing. Because it's not. The one and only good fight for it is this one. This is the only good fight for my Myongest. Which is why I'm not doing it. Because I'm sick and tired of people using my Myongest. I'm tired of it. I'm fucking tired. My Myongest is good in one case, and I hate it. It's not part of the rules. Anybody who wants to do this can use it. That's perfectly fine by me. I just don't want to use it because I'm sick and tired of people in chat saying, you should use Myongest, you should use Myongest makes a challenge. No, it fucking doesn't. So I'm here to prove that not only does it only makes the challenge easy for this fight, so I'm here to prove you can do it without it entirely. Anyway, what do you want to talk about? Let's have a conversation. Because I'm going a little bit insane otherwise, and I can see the the viewership fucking flatlining because, oh god, let me not spiral. Let me not spiral on stream. That'd be a good idea. Can we talk about the economy? What's there to talk about the economy about? The economy certainly is. It is very much. It does exist. Not sure what else there's to talk about. The economy. Just about to distort. I'm not about to distort. I'm just tired. Frankly, I'm just tired. You globally remove yes out of my Myongest from the game. I wish I could. If I became head director, first thing I do. Oh, for fuck's sake! It's not... God, I think I'm too tired for this. Normally I can... I don't know. I don't know. I need to not bring in my real-world problems into this, because... No. I can see the viewership rate declining, and that's proof that nobody wants to hear about my fucking problems. Every single time I want an evade to succeed, it's always the evade that fails. The critical evades never succeed. Just ever. It's like a universal constant. See? None of the critical evades have ever succeeded. Like, without fail. Because if any of those evades had succeeded here, we'd be alive. If any of those evades succeeded. Any of them. And this is why... This is partly why I'm beginning to go a little bit insane. Because it's not bad RNG. It's always the one critical moment. The one critical moment where I need something to go in my favour. Anything to go in my favour. It doesn't. And that just kills me. Well, it literally kills me. And I just hope I don't die. And we lost the clash. So it doesn't matter now because we didn't get 4 hits off. Or maybe our other attacks will. Never mind. I didn't know our Unrelenting hadn't proc the turn before. We could have just switched over to slash mode and we would have been perfectly fine. Isn't that funny? We would have been perfectly fine. We were immortal then. I didn't realize what I was doing and I made the wrong tactical choice. Say la vie. We were that fucking close. We were that close, and we started getting bad luck. It's funny how that works out. Anyway, Rapid Gash this time. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you violently. I'm going to grind your bones down to ash. Watch this. Watch this shit, because I don't care anymore. I don't care that Xiao's going to kill me here. Die! Why am I not using my youngest? All this time I've been thinking, using my youngest is... Hold on. All this time, chat, I've thought of using my youngest as giving in. And I've thought, oh, no, I must stay true to my ideals, and etc. But why am I doing that? I'm doing that to spite the people that have been telling me to use it. I've been doing it to spite the backseaters. But do they care? No. The backseaters don't care. They're not here. So why should I hurt myself out of spite for them? That's wrong. So, no. I'm making myself feel pain. I'm making myself feel all this suffering to try and prove myself better because I think giving in is that... But that's not... No. Using my youngest isn't giving in here. Using my youngest is beating it. So, no, actually. I will use my youngest. Let's use my youngest. I get it now. Because Stop listening to Carmen. I'm not listening to Carmen here. All this time I've thought the voice in my head was telling me, oh no, if I'm, like, giving in using my youngest will be giving into Carmen. But that's not giving into Carmen. Because that would work. I'm not listening to her. All this time, I've been listening to her without even realizing. I've been saying, oh, I've not been listening to Carmen. Carmen hasn't been here talking to me. This is what she wouldn't want me to do. So yes, I'm going to use my Angst. I'm going to escape the suffering. I'm going to win. I'm going to stop massively suffering here. Because this is the correct choice. So, chat, let's build a my Angst deck. I don't know what music to put on for this, but you know what? Let me undeafen myself. Let me open myself up back to the real music. Let's build a my Angst deck. After several streams, it had finally clicked. I had been viewing my Angst as the enemy, as Carmen's agent in the world, as pure evil that I had promised I would never touch, and blinded by spite, I was making my life miserable. For what? To try and punish people who likely weren't even there anymore? I was so busy with blinding myself to the world around me, to any way that wasn't my own, that I missed what the entire point of the challenge was. I was spiraling further and further into an insanity of my creation, all the while clinging to the belief that I was right, that I was going to prove them all wrong. And I've joked before about this must be what distortion feels like, whenever we were going into sensory overload mode, like Yesod's realization for the egoless challenge or the gambling section last video. But honestly, I think this is what distortion must feel like, drowning out all other views, all external help, in the pursuit of a vain and pointless goal, all the while believing that you're in the right for doing so. It's not an easy cycle to break, honestly. I know that firsthand now, but realizing the cycle exists in the first place is the first step towards escape, towards something better. Now, that's not to say the path out is easy, actually quite the opposite. I've never used a good my Angst build before, so chat needed to help me out with the basic function and what cards I would want to run to get the most possible out of it. We ended up settling on this deck here, with the Fleet Footsteps of Aids being incredibly useful to maintain our stagger and health throughout the fight. Even still, it took us hours from here, it wasn't over the minute we used my Angst, but before long, a star of the city fell. One seal down, and one to go. In the background of all of this, we've been steadily chipping away at the abnormality fights and realizations available to us. We need to beat most of them to level up to Impuritas, so it's important we keep on top of them when we can. Hod's and Yesod's realizations were done towards the star of the city, with a few other abnormality encounters being resolved as we went on. None of these really bore fruit, with a really interesting possibility in the form of Gevra's realization being blocked by the hell that is Tifrith's. We'll need to resolve that when we reach Impuritas, but for now we can just scrounge up enough XP to level up the library when we do, eventually, break the last seal. In pursuit of this, we cleared out the Snow Queen on Roland's floor, Borrowing Heaven on Hockma's floor, Big Bird and Punishing Bird for Bina, Scarecrow and Warm-Hearted Woodman for Shased, and the rest of Gebra and Tifrith's abnormalities up to their actual realizations. With that, there's only one thing left to do. It's time to face Distorted Yan. Distorted Yan is the final boss of the leftmost track, and ordinarily wouldn't be too much of an issue. Yan himself cannot be targeted until you deplete the health of his two hands, something which can be done fairly easily under normal conditions, letting you then go on to attack the body itself. There's just one thing that stops our experience from being like that. Yan is the one and only boss and star of the city to apply permanent power null to a single librarian. Xiao also had this, but considering it was only in her phase 2, which we ended up clearing and I haven't actually focused on because I've already put a lot of stream footage in this video and I don't really want to overload it, so by technicality, he's not the only one to apply power null, but he is the only one to apply it always. However, like in the reception of the Crying Children, this wouldn't ordinarily be much of a problem with normal conditions. But here, with us only being allowed a single librarian on the field, this becomes far more of an issue. If this is like the Crying Children though, can't we just resolve it by using the Purple Tear's defensive stance? That would let us ignore Yan's gimmick entirely, just doing our usual power stacking moves to beat the encounter quickly, and so yeah, you can probably tell by the length left in the video, that's not how things are going to go down. For some reason, power null isn't a negative effect, so it won't be cleared from a librarian using the Purple Tear's defensive stance. This means that until we can stop Yan from using Vigil, the card that inflicts power null onto us, we are entirely unable to gain additional clashing power in any way, shape, or form, scuppering our main method of attack. So, is this it? Have we finally met our match? Does the challenge once again lose to a boss designed with a clear intention of fighting it with a team? Well, no. Actually, not at all. It's just the margin of error left to us to actually achieve victory is slim. Yet, not so slim as to be a repeat of the Crying Children. The strategy is actually rather simple, and is something I borrowed entirely from Sans Gaming and Mr. Boomy. The trick is this. Just take less damage, idiot. That's an oversimplification, but it does all boil down to simply surviving until we reach the turn where Spring's Genesis procs, making us immortal for the rest of the fight. To achieve this, we continually clash with one of Yan's cards that grants strength to the hands, making sure to clash with the worst cards on the field for us each turn. This strategy should be really consistent, and actually does ensure that we get to Spring's Genesis rather often. There's just one problem. When Spring's Genesis procs, if the pedal ends up landing on Yan rather than one of the hands, the run is dead. We have zero way of hitting Yan through all of his counter dice, meaning that all of the effort we spent to get to that point needs to be repeated again. Statistically, this should be a 1 in 3 chance, making the probability of any one run failing roughly 0.3. Technically it should be 0.333333333, so on and so forth, but I didn't want to have to type that out at the time I did the maths that we're about to do, so just treat it as 0.3. This was not the result that happened, in what must be the unluckiest streak in the entirety of the challenge. At the time whilst we were figuring this out, me, Sans Gaming, and another member in the Discord, which you should join by the way, a lot of very cool people are there, and we recently hit 400 members, which I'm pretty happy about, were documenting where the pedal went each time we reached Yan. Before we stopped counting, this total went up to 35 points of data, of which 29 times over the pedal hit Yan. Not in a row, just total out of 35. Out of curiosity, I decided to run a statistical test on this to see what the chances were of an event like this occurring. This test is called a binomial test, and it's used quite frequently in data analysis to see if the probability of an event occurring is what you think it is, accounting for random variation of data. As an example, if I was to run a binomial distribution test on flipping a coin, and I had 10 values to run from, I would lay it out like this. C, which is just a random letter, is distributed binomially in a set of 10, with a 0.5 probability of the outcome of heads occurring. Let's say, for the sake of an example, I got 6 heads out of these 10 flips, which, running through the probability of that or more occurring, gives me a value of 0.38. For scientific analysis, we tend to operate on a 5% level, which is 0.05. This means that, in this case, we don't have sufficient evidence to disprove that a coin does have a 50-50 chance of hitting heads each flip, as 0.38 is larger than 0.05. Now let's apply the same thing to pedals and Yan. P is distributed binomially in a set of 35, with a 0.3 probability of the pedal hitting Yan. Calculating it, the chance of hitting Yan 29 times or more out of 35 is 0.000000001431, or about 1.43 times 10 to the minus 10. For reference, our usual marker of significance when put in standard form is 5 times 10 to the minus 2, which means that the data we got is 8 entire orders of magnitude larger than our cutoff for significance. This is roughly equal to 10 billion times the difference. Now, this got me interested and concerned in equal measure. This wouldn't be the first time, after all, Project Moon did something strange with their coding choices. See, for example, the fact that in the case of a speed tie, whoever literally reaches their target first gets to act first. That's not a joke, look it up, which could potentially jeopardize the future of the run. I had to look further, or rather, I had to ask the people in my Discord to look further for me, because there's not a snowball's chance in hell that I'm going to try and pass PM's code. And you know what the funny thing is? Pseudo-random algorithms aside, the code does give a 1 in 3 chance for the pedal to land on anyone in the reception. We just got abysmally unlucky. So really, there was only one thing left for it. We just had to keep trying until the bad luck wears off. And eventually, the bad luck did. Was my motivation to start streaming this fight again? Because when we actually get the fight down, it's still going to take like 10 years to get it done. But yeah. Can't wait for me to Impuritas. I'm honestly looking forward to Impuritas, actually. I think it's going to be cool. But yeah, I mean, I'm honestly not sure what we'll do for Impuritas, because, once again, I've never reached Impuritas before. So it will be entirely new for me. For True Ending, you need all realizations, yes. The hardest is going to be Tiferath. Tiferath's realization is going to be an interesting time for us. I hope you enjoy Impuritas despite the BS. I hope I enjoy it too. I think it'll be cool to see, and I hope all of you lot will enjoy it too. But yeah, for the next, like, 10 hours we'll be streaming for as I go through the motions over and over again to actually get this fight done. What would you all like to talk about? Because, you know, we will have a little bit of time, and by a little bit of time, I mean, apparently this takes about an hour to get done. Also, Petal landed on somebody we want. Okay, fragments in somewhere. I just realized... Oh, I just realized why the thing went weird. We're supposed to use a range page on that, but we used pleasure instead. And what pleasure did was... Oh, okay, that's interesting. I did the strategy wrong, but it still worked. There's a joke in there somewhere about how I play this game. So, if we only use unlocks here, can we only draw unlocks? Is that how this works? Okay, this is what I fucked up before. I didn't quite understand how drawing things worked. I didn't know that you could only ever have one copy of a page in your hand at once. So yeah, that's good. You didn't know that. I've never beaten this game before. This is the furthest I've gotten into the game. Like, you think I understand how this game works? Yeah, people always expect me to know how to play this game. No, I don't. I don't know how to play this game. I am, like, the least competent Ruina player. And I'm still here. So, you know, what's your excuse? That's right, I'm calling you out, random chat... I'm calling you out, random chat member who hasn't yet beaten the Library of Ruina. What's your excuse? I don't normally point at my camera, it's weird. You random chat member have beaten it actually. Ah, shit. I hit the one chat member that actually has beaten Ruina. You beat the game 3 times before you learnt block block reduces damage even if you lose the clash. Wow. I mean, yeah, no, fair. It isn't really explained, but... Your excuse is Ruina is your favorite game ever and you don't want to end. Okay, that's a good excuse. I'll accept that. I will accept that as an excuse. Random chat member 2 have also beaten the game. Is there anyone here who hasn't beaten Library of Ruina? Me. I am the random chat member. I think we should all stop relying on statistics. I think that would be very funny. Technically, okay, it's time to talk philosophy, because we've got a while, so I may as well talk philosophy. One moment. Let me just go Bina story music. Bina story theme. Because, you know, fitting. So, according to Hume, you actually can't know... there is actually no reason to believe that anything has an increased chance of happening over another thing. Which, to explain, if... Okay, let me pose a question to your chat. Do you think it is likely that the sun will rise tomorrow? Yes or no? Yes, yes. Okay, I'm seeing some yeses. Okay, I'm seeing quite a few yeses. I saw one no. Well, you might not believe it, but the no is actually... well, you have... Okay, the no is right. You have no reason to believe that any statistical outcome is more likely than another to occur. This is a cool problem, which, if you know the philosopher Hume, this is a problem that Hume came up with, which is effectively, it's called the problem of induction. And to explain the problem of induction, it's basically, why do you think that because things happen, they will happen again? The reason why you believe things will happen again because they've happened in the past is due to induction. That's an inductive argument. Induction is all of scientific logic is induction. It's basically making judgments on what will happen based on what has already happened. Right? But the problem with induction is, why do you believe induction works? Well, induction works because you've observed in the past that induction has worked. But here's the thing. How are you defending that? Well, you're defending it through induction. So you're defending induction through induction. There's no reason to believe that that induction is right. Logically, there is no reason. There is no actual solid logic behind that happening, and you can put that up to everything. Everything that is said by science, if Hume's problem is true, there is no logical reason to ever believe that anything at all should happen. For example, one of Hume's really interesting ones is, let's say, it's one of, a lot of the thing is people try and go, well, I can observe thing in time 1, and later I observe thing in time 2. Now, we as humans naturally go, time 1 must equate to time 2. But no. There's no reason for thing at time 1 to be thing at time 2, and that's everything. Looking back at time, there is no reason why you and me have existed at time. We could have just started existing now, and we'd have none the wiser. So according to that, nothing ever happens. No, things happen. It's just, well, that's a different philosophical problem, but there's no reason to believe that anything should ever happen. Statistically speaking, not statistically speaking, logically speaking, the sun is just as likely to explode tomorrow as to rise. You're not built for this. I love philosophy. Philosophy is amazing. I would love talking to Bina, so I love tea because I'm British. But also, I think I would love discussing philosophical things with Bina. I think that'd be really cool to be able to do, because she seems like she would have some interesting takes. The only problem is if, like, you get in there, start talking to her, and find out she likes, I don't know, she really agrees with the work of, God, what's his name? It's that one guy that everyone laughs at in not in philosophy, in psychology. He's not really a philosopher, but, you know, psychologists and philosophers, they broadly do the same thing. Way to offend both camps there. And then even if we did just start existing, we still remember everything that happened, we still feel everything, so what really changed? Nothing. Really, fundamentally. It's an interesting one. I talked to a friend about this, about the problem of free will is, it's pretty major, because if we don't have well, it feels... Freud, thank you! Freud, yes. I hope Bina doesn't like Freud. But yeah. God, what was I saying? Yeah, I was discussing with a friend about free will. And the thing we ended up settling on was, if we don't have free will, what does it matter? Currently, everything I'm doing regardless of the knowledge that I have free will or not. So if I don't have free will, and this is all that free will is, I honestly don't care. I quite enjoy how I live. So even if I don't have free will, I don't see the problem. Freud is goated purely because he threw stuff at the wall. My favorite my favorite part about Freud, that's a tongue twister. Also, ironically enough, what I just did was a spoonerism, which is a different can of worms. My favorite part about Freud is the fact that every modern understanding in psychology we have happened because people saw Freud's work and thought, this person's a fucking idiot. I think I can be a better philosopher, a better psychologist than him. And so the rest of modern psychology happened. Because people are like, this man's an idiot. Surely this isn't how things work. It's great. It's hilarious. I love it. Freud is a funny person because he's fucking insane and his work is terrible. But it's really interesting to laugh at. And I think, honestly, that's a pretty good accomplishment. If you can have a bunch of people thinking you're an idiot and laugh at you, and that spurs on the entirety of development in the field as we know it today, that's pretty good going. There was an actual... No. Freud didn't actually hang someone upside down. He may have at one point or another, but it's not there today. There's not an upside down hanging naked man in Freud's office today that is live. This philosophical speech surely will be in a video. I mean, it would be interesting to put in a video. I'm not sure it makes for exactly the most entertaining talks, but, you know, it's funny at least. Pretending to be Beaner for 30 minutes straight. I don't have a cup of tea with me. If I had a cup of tea with me, then it would be perfect. This guy sucks so much, I'm going to prove him wrong. Yeah. Many such cases. I love science. I don't get how some people don't like science, because it's so funny. It's like... And also, the thing is, most science is just magic. Like, if you think about it, like, have you ever looked at the things, the kind of shit physicists do? You cannot tell me, why did I turn into a Scot for a second there? You can't tell me that physicists aren't using magic runes. You can't tell me they're not just doing magic. Have you looked at it? Like, hold on, let me just pull something up. Like, this thing. Like, this is just a magic rune. What it is, by the way, just to explain what it is, because I do actually know what a Feynman diagram is. Effectively, hold on, let me get a full image so I can explain it. Open image in new tab. So, the entire thing about this Feynman diagram is basically, from memory, this is time? Although this looks weird, why is it like this? Those arrows should be going like that. Like, the arrows are going a weird way. The arrows should be going this way. Time goes here, energy goes here. You end up seeing particles move like this up. And then they call it, I believe they call it an imaginary photon. An imaginary photon transfers energy between these two particles and then they change shape. This is magic. Like, these things, look at them. What the fuck even is this anymore? What is it? What does this mean? At least us biologists, we're doing real. We work with real things. For example, I mean, okay, most people know photosynthesis, right? So let me look up the Krebs cycle, because this is a more advanced version of so everyone's heard of respiration, not photosynthesis. This is respiration. This is one part. I believe the Krebs cycle is one part of respiration, but I may be wrong. Yeah, this is one part, because you end up with, you have your glucose, the glucose then through ATP and NAD is then reduced into two triose phosphate groups. The two triose phosphate groups are then converted into pyruvates. Pyruvates then become acetyl groups, which then have acetyl, they have coenzyme A. Coenzyme A takes them, they then go with citrate, etc, 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 ATP. This is reasonable. This isn't magic. Everyone can understand this. I had to know that off by heart. Ooh, I love the Krebs cycle. It's so fun, and totally not at all taxing on your sanity. Anyway, I love science. Science is cool. Remember when this was a Librarian stream? Yeah. Like, but seriously though, organic chemistry it's just alchemy. It's just alchemy. It's really cool. I like it. If I legally had a chemist license, which I don't, by the way, I'm not legally a chemist. I don't have a chemical engineer degree. I can't call myself a chemist. I would do Nile Red stuff. Nile Red stuff's really cool. And personal identity and immortality. I don't actually know that work, although I have heard some interesting, like research, well not research, but interesting talks done on immortality. Well, no, not immortality, on personal identity. Because for me, personal identity, I don't believe personal identity exists. I believe that identity is a construct that consists of your own perception of yourself and the world's perception of you. For example, if everyone was to suddenly believe that I was the greatest person on Earth, which they wouldn't, then I would be the greatest person on Earth. Which is why I don't believe personal identity exists. I believe identity itself is fundamentally linked between your own perception of yourself and the perception of those around you. Which is why I think you can change your own identity, but I believe it's harder than people would think. Because I think not only do you have to convince yourself that you've changed, you also have to convince those around you that you've changed. But yeah. As for immortality is one of my major goals in life. Which is kind of an oxymoron. It's one of my major first goals in life. It's the reason why I'm going so heavily into biomedical stuff. I don't want to die. I would like to live forever. That's the goal. I have had somebody tell me before that my goals are effectively, I want to become a modern day vampire, and I can't get that thought out of my head. Because yeah, no, in effect, those are my goals, to become a modern day vampire. Okay, so I should technically say, what I would want to be working on is amortality, aka the ability to not die until someone kills you. Effectively. You're the thirst for blood as shown with the misclick, yeah. But yeah, because like one of the major, it's really interesting actually to see how medical research is going towards immortality. The main thing I want to look into really is, so the main reason why people die is to do with a mechanism called senescence. And senescence is basically the part of the body that's responsible for handling, as cells get older and replicate worse, it's the sort of thing that's supposed to keep them in line and make it so they don't actually cause too many errors. The problem with senescence is the fact that our body goes a little bit too gung-ho with it, and then starts, like, actually killing and harming cells, and you end up seeing faults begin to occur with inflammation. It's due to overphosphorylation of DNA quite heavily, and overphosphorylation of a lot of different things. If you... Wait, what? How the fuck did you act? Yeah, so that's the main thing I would want to do research into, a way to stop senescence being as prevalent and harmful as it is to the human body. And one of the things that I think would be interesting to look into for me personally would be looking into it to see if we could steal sort of the replosome of bacterial cells. And I think because the thing about the replosome of bacterial cells is they've got to be really good at replicating, because bacterial cells don't... So, human DNA has something called introns and extrons. And introns and extrons basically allow us to determine what part of our biology, or what part of our genetic sequence gets done at any one time. And that's a whole process. It's the reason why transcriptomics is really useful, which is transcriptomics, to put it into, it's not only getting genetic sequencing done, it's also getting RNA sequencing done. But yeah, our replosome isn't too good because we don't actually really need to care about mutations as much, whereas bacteria don't have introns and extrons, so their replosome needs to be far better so they can replicate, because they don't have sort of this same cell lifetime that we do, because they've got to replicate infinitely. So the idea would be to steal from them, take a better replosome from them, and try and input that in. And the other thing would be to try and there's a thing which is telomeres on genetic things. And the idea would be to take telomerase and then use telomerase to extend these telomeres so that we can continue to replicate our DNA longer. Anyway, we won. Whoops. Got a little bit carried away there. The idea of Netsack being drunk and talking about science whilst casually beating the shit out of Stodiana stuck in your mind. Yeah, that's fair. Oh. Right, okay. Let me turn the music back on. And with that, the final seal was broken. We had done it. Star of the City was finally finished. That stream went on to try and beat the Hannah Association, but that's a story for another day, and a story that actually hasn't been written yet. I ended stream basically immediately afterwards. But now I'd like to firstly say thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. This has been a while in the making, mostly because I kept changing my mind on what I actually wanted to do with the video itself. If you've made it to here and you're not subscribed already, please do consider subscribing and doing all the usual interaction stuff with the video. It really does help out with the channel and the performance of the video itself, of course. The day when this comes out, I'll probably be streaming, so if you want to catch the continuation of the challenge, then consider dropping by. It's really great to talk to you all, and genuinely it makes the challenge far more bearable for me. Additionally, thank you to the members. You lot keep me in business, and I really wouldn't be able to do this without you. But with that, good morning, good evening, and good night. I'll see you all next time.